the minutes out last week. Is there a motion to approve, or is there any changes to edits, modifications to the minutes that I can make for anyone?
Look good to me.
Oh, hi, Jean. If not, may I get a motion to approve, please?
I'll make a motion.
So moved.
Excellent, thank you. There's a motion and seconded. Is there all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed?
Can't do this.
Any abstentions? Okay, great, approved. Great, okay. So right into the agenda, more discussion on forms of government. Just to give you a quick update, Lauren N. and I and Jean had a conference call with Tom Banish and Tom Scarpati, and it was really enlightening. Both of them are very different personalities, as you can imagine. Everybody's different, and so the notes I took on with Tom Banish, he was our first one at 10 o'clock. Lauren, he told us to also look at, if we can look at the towns of Stonington and the town of Woodbridge as maybe a couple of other examples to look at as forms of government. I didn't write down what they were, but for some reason, Tom thought that we should take a look at what they do.
Okay.
Tom and Lauren and Jean, please interrupt me and add whatever you like. He seems to like the system that we have now. He's in favor of 4-year terms versus 2-year terms. So I think the only person that we've talked with who likes it the way it is Fillmore so far. And I think that's correct. Like I said, he seems to think that we have a good system now. He believes that, this is a little off the subject, but maybe not. He is not in favor of opponents of and the other party getting on to the Board of Selectmen. Am I saying that right?
Yeah, so the loser that gets on.
So the loser gets on too, and he was complaining that, and not to bring up any names, he was complaining that it made it very difficult to govern when the opposite party was providing so much consternation, so to speak. It's not a bad thing. It's checks and balances, I believe, but he's not in favor of that. He believes that the Board of Selectmen should also be in charge of employees in the HR function. He thinks also that there should be an absolute chain of command. There was some complaints where other people on the board might have been going indirectly or directly to other employees within the town around the first selectman. And I don't know any of the details about that. I'm just giving you what he relayed, what he said, but I'm a big believer in a chain of command, and that would bother me too if anybody did that. So he did mention, we started talking about the town manager in a roundabout way. I don't think I brought it up, but it came up from a town administrator perspective. It's already in the charter. And he thought that might be something to look at as well, is to filling that position versus a town manager. And Lauren R., is there a job description for the town administrator position, do you think?
I would imagine that there has to be one because we did have one a very long time ago. So I would imagine that one exists, and I can take a look through my files for it.
Okay.
Maddie, I'm in a meeting.
Yeah, if you could. Hi, sweetheart. Hi.
Well, now you have to say hi.
Hi. Hi. Yeah, maybe we can take a look at that at our next meeting.
Yeah,
Just-
so
I'm
I'll
just
pull that
interested-
together for you and
Okay.
I'll pull together the actual language from the charter that empowers that position. And I'll
Okay.
send that out between this week and next week.
That'd be great. Lauren. Okay. And he also taught Lauren, he also asked us or advised us, recommended that we also talk with Dave Anderson, our town planner. And Tom thinks that Dave has some strong opinions on the town manager role.
He
So it
does.
might be good to hear about. Guys, I am completely new at all of this. I don't know anybody or anything. So you guys know all of
Dave's-
that.
Yeah, Bob, Dave's got a pretty strong view.
Okay.
Really smart guy.
Okay,
And
good.
this is why I'm gonna take it to the entire senior staff, to all the directors, to give them all an opportunity. And I know Dave is gonna be one of the first ones that takes me up on that opportunity, but I want them all to have the opportunity to give you guys some input. And some, you know, a lot of our directors have worked private, and they've worked for other towns that have different forms of government. So they come with a different background as well. So everyone kind of has an opinion on this in town campus.
Great. Okay. The more opinion we can get, the better, I think. So we did the same with, so Lauren and Jean, anything on your end about Tom that you might, that I forgot, you might want to add?
He mentioned about the town manager, he was emphasizing that, it would just cost a lot of money. He thought, it would,
Right.
I don't think he was necessarily advocating for having a town administrator, but he was saying, he basically said, well, there would kind of be two ways to accomplish having
Right.
almost like having a town manager. And so, one would just be what our charter allows for. And, it can't do everything that a town manager can do. But he said he thought each one would cost $150,000 to $180,000. And and in terms of when you asked about the pandemic, who would really be prepared for that, I
Right.
think kind of echoed what Fillmore had said in terms of if you have competent people on the
Advising you.
town staff, that really honestly no one would really be specific in a first selectman or a town manager role. There's no one in particular who would be prepared for a pandemic per se, but there's different plans that town stuff have. So yeah.
Good.
But
Thanks
to
for that.
Lauren's point, he really did stress that, he felt that the change in, because when we were talking about the terms, he said the change in, in political party, let's just say administration, but it's political party primarily, is probably the most disruptive to town employees.
True.
Because there is not the continuity. So to your point, I think it's very important that we get input from all of the managers, whether they believe that this form of government is fine, but here are the pitfalls, or whether they have strong opinions, like I know Dave Anderson does in regard to a town manager. I think it's important as we go through this process. And
Good.
I just want to add something, and it's probably won't come up until the next agenda, but I had been doing a little research, and unless what I'm seeing is outdated, and I don't believe it is, the salary levels for town managers, and again, I don't know what level, I don't think they're quite as steep as what our other former first selectmen believe they are. But it would be really interesting to talk to our HR director, because I think she probably has, her finger on the pulse more than what we can do in research. But it wasn't, and I can share next time or whenever you want, what the average salaries were. So
Okay.
compared to what we pay for selectmen, and I think our town has stepped up a lot more than other towns have. I don't think it's that significant.
So
Yeah,
if I could just piggyback on that comment, Jean, when we were doing the charter revision in 2015, we actually looked into salaries for town managers. And at that time, we anticipated that the salary for a town manager for Madison would have been somewhere around 135 to 140. Might be a little more than that now because that was 5 years ago. But yeah, the 180 number did kind of strike me as being very high when that was just mentioned. And just for reference, the first selectman salary right now is $100,000. So
Right,
it's not
right.
astronomically higher than that.
Right.
When we had done the initial research into council manager form of government, I had looked at some of the salary stuff, and I found some art, it was like a newspaper article, but it was a survey of towns. Granted, this was in the north central region of Connecticut, so it wasn't Madison. But oh yeah, this was from 2019. Said that first selectmen and mayors earned $65,900 to $102,000, whereas town managers earned $87,500 to $203,000. So
Wow.
there was a significant difference. And then the other thing too was the town of Clinton, had to authorize a $32,000 expenditure to hire a search firm just to get the town
Yeah.
manager. And then another article I remember reading, I don't have notes on this, but I think it was maybe the town of Groton, where there was a town manager. I forget what they were being paid. It was, $100-something-thousand, and they'd only been there, I think, for a year or two, and they got an offer to go somewhere else and then use that to get their salary bumped up, another $10,000 or $15,000. So I just thought that was interesting data that people might want to know.
The other thing that's interesting is if we decided to go with a manager, I think you also would substantially reduce the Board of Selectmen's salary.
That's a good point. Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, but to the point where it's a stipend of 25 grand a year or something like that,
Or less, yeah.
or less.
Mhm.
Well, I didn't even cover the gas.
I mean, I don't think that the Board of the first select person would be there full time. I think they would
Right.
more or less be like the chairman of the chairman of the board, if you will. But I don't think that they would be. But that's a good point, Peter, to
Yeah.
see what the total.
It'll help
So that-
defray a little bit of it.
They could offset each other to some extent.
Mhm.
Sure.
Yeah.
So we also talked with Tom Scarpati. I really like Tom. He's an impressive guy. I wish I paid more attention to the politics back in the early 2000s. And I didn't. So, but he's also in favor of a 4-year term for the Board of Selectmen. He believes it's way too short. He also believes, and we got into the town manager thing again right away. And he also believes that the town manager should have a short tenure. But the town managers that we've talked to, they've all had contracts, so that takes care of that. There's only one town manager, I think it's town North Branford, that doesn't have a contract, and that's very rare. He believes that the town manager could become too powerful and not do the kind of the business of the town. If there's a change in administrations from one to another, there could be some strife there. Is what I got from that. And I always think, and I brought this up. We talked about this. That if we did go to a town manager system, I would look at the Board of Selectmen as a board of directors, where the Board of Directors or the Board of Selectmen would set the strategy, and the town manager and the staff would execute on that strategy. So he agreed with that. He believes very strongly that anybody who's taking on a selectman's role has to be very qualified and has to have the background. Candidates need to qualify to manage. And if we raise the salary, of the Board of Selectmen, it would bring out more participation. So I don't know where that fit in with the town manager though, because we'd want to reduce the Board of Selectmen salary to offset that.
Wasn't he saying that in the context of that's if you weren't going for a town manager, but you were trying to just have a first selectman with a 4-year term? That's how I interpret the comment.
That's how you took that, Lauren? Okay.
He was saying if you boosted the salary and made it like a $200,000 a year job, first selectman, a 4-year term,
Right.
he was emphasizing, they'd have to somehow be vetted with, with their resume and credentials, but I don't really know practically how that could be done.
I don't either.
Be like a committee that says this person is qualified or not qualified to manage. So I think that would be hard to actually do.
Right. Yeah, I can't imagine.
The thing is, he was looking at it like you would need to interview and get a resume, but you got to realize that it's the town committees that
Right.
Are the ones that look to fill the positions. So that would obviously fall to them to, in the selection process. And I'm not sure, I don't know enough about politics to know, yes, when you interview for any position, it's just like I did for the Board of Selectmen, and I'm sure, Peter, you did for the, what you ran for, you do provide your resume and you go through an
Right.
interview.
But it's pretty cursory though.
It is very cursory. So it's more, I don't want to say it's more like who you know or who you don't know, but
They're just
are
lucky
you
to have
willing?
you.
Again, it's volunteer. It's a little different with a paid
Yeah,
position.
I guess I don't think paying a first selectman $200,000 is going to get us anybody more qualified than we get now.
Right.
I really don't.
And you've got to
to think that
have
you're
a break in your career.
to think that you're
Yeah.
going to get, and that's the challenge. And even Tom Banish said, look, I ran for, I basically gave up my career to do a term as first selectman. I ran again. And he said, if I hadn't run again, or if I had lost, I probably could have picked up my career. But he said, unfortunately, another 2 years, I gave up now 4 years of a career, and now I'm out looking for a job. So, unless you're somebody like a Fillmore who's retired and has, wants to dedicate the time, he's not doing it for the money, or a Tom Scarpati who wants to do it for the same reason, you're not going to attract
No.
a younger person.
Right.
You're probably looking at somebody, either that, or you're looking at somebody who really doesn't need the money and just wants to do it, or has another spouse maybe at home who's making enough money that it doesn't matter. So,
Right.
Those are the limitations there. I mean, that's the difference to how you have to weigh between the town. One of the things you have to weigh between the town manager and the first selectman.
Right. And who's going to put a break in their career? Like I was using that example, you're a 50-year-old, 45-year-old person, and you're gonna stop doing your banking or legal job, and you're gonna jump into the town for a couple of years.
Yeah.
I don't think that's not gonna attract a lot of people. So that's the sum and substance of the two Toms that we talked to today. Very interesting. And I'm glad we talked to them, because having been in that role gives you a whole different perspective, which is great. So I hope to talk to more of them. And he didn't really recommend anybody else to talk to.
That's
He's
kind of
almost,
all of them that are still living, I think.
is that right? We got
For Madison,
Fillmore.
Fillmore,
Yeah, okay.
Tom, Scarpati.
Tom
Somebody just
Rylander
passed.
deceased. Tom Rylander died recently.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
You got Gus. I mean, Gus was Gus a first selectman, or was Gus a selectman?
First selectman.
Okay, but
Yeah.
Gus is already giving us his view, so that's okay.
Yeah,
Gus and Al, you've spoken to already as well.
Yep, Al was right.
And
I forgot
so
now.
there's David LaFemina, but he doesn't live in town anymore. And I'm not sure how available he is. I could try to reach out to him, but that's probably the only one between now
Okay.
and like the early 80s.
Yeah, I think so.
yeah, the longer you go back there, the less, the less valuable the information might be. Okay. I also sent out the other, what I hope is the final PowerPoint presentation for next week's public forum. I sent it out a few hours ago. If anybody has any questions, please feel free to let me know if they have any changes. It looked really good. Again, Lauren did a wonderful job on it. And looks pretty, and it has some good information, nice and professionally done. And then so Lauren, on the public forum next week, it's all going to be on Zoom, right?
Yeah. So
Yeah.
it will look a lot like this meeting looks. If you go to the bottom of your screen, there's a black bar that pops up and there's a button that says participants. If you click on that, you'll see it'll pop out and you'll see a list of panelists, which are all of us, and then a list of attendees. You'll see right now that Gus Horvath is an attendee in your meeting tonight. So when it's a public hearing, that's where all of your public will be. They'll be on this list and they can raise their hand and then I will invite them to speak.
I don't see God. Oh, wait.
Under attendees.
Okay, yeah.
Attendees,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, gotcha. I didn't know you could do that. Okay, great.
Can you hear us?
Yeah, he just can't speak right now because attendees are automatically muted.
Okay.
So it's probably killing him right now that he can't, he can't hear a meeting.
Can he hear you, Lauren? Can he
Yeah,
hear
oh
you?
yeah, he can hear me.
Okay.
We'd love to have him if you, I mean, can he come in if we wanted
Yeah.
to? Well, I would be more than happy to have him in, if that's okay
All
with
right.
everybody.
We'll let him in.
Okay, he's on,
He's
looks like he's on mute.
I mean, he wants to come in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have to want to come in too. Anyway, so Lauren, how do you see the format? We're just going to open up the meeting as we usually do. If there are any attendees, we'll welcome them. We'll start to go through the deck.
Yep.
Can people ask questions anytime, or do they have to wait to the end? Is there anything prohibiting them from asking questions?
I mean, you're the chair, so really, if you want to let them ask questions prior to the PowerPoint, you can. Generally, what we do is we do the PowerPoint first, so that hopefully that answers some questions or gives a little bit more insight before people ask questions. But
Okay.
what we'll do is I will load up the PowerPoint and then I'll share my screen. So as you go through, they'll also see it. That's like, instead of having a projector, they'll see it on my screen.
Great.
And then, whatever questions they have, you guys can answer. Technically, public comment is just for comment. It's not really a back and forth, but with informational sessions like this, we tend to give answers because
Yeah.
something like this has a lot of question versus a lot of opinion right now.
Right. This is why we're doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I mean, that's our whole intent is to get people to participate and get their opinions. And will that be recorded as well? So we could go
Yes.
back to it for,
Yep. So
okay.
it'll be recorded. I record everything to my system and I give it to the cable access channel so that they can put it on the cable access channel. So they don't put your meetings on their channel lineup, but they will put public hearings.
Okay.
So that will get on the TV, but also it's automatically uploaded to YouTube and then people can watch it. They could go
Okay.
back now to the beginning of the meeting on YouTube and watch the whole thing.
Okay. Okay, great.
How else is this being, besides the notice in the paper, is this being advertised in any other ways or like what? Yeah.
So there was an email blast that went out last week when I scheduled it. It goes to everybody who's a subscriber on the website. And then what I was going to do at the end of the week this week for you guys is send out another newsletter through the website that reminded people of the public hearing next week.
Okay. And they have a copy of the deck on the website as well?
Yep, it should be up there.
Okay, great. Perfect. Okay. This could be even more efficient than being in person.
We got a lot of public participation for the budget. I mean, obviously that's, you know, a big deal,
Yeah,
but
right.
we did get more, I think, public participation on the budget and the Board of Finance meetings than we would have if we had held them in person.
This could be a new normal, maybe.
Will this be posted on like social media also, or
I can share it. So usually the webmaster shares it to the town page, but I'll make sure that she does that. And then you guys obviously can share the calendar invite as well.
Not even sure I know how to do that, but okay. Thank you. Well, I'm looking forward to that. It's kind of a little bit of a culmination of all the work we're doing, just to see what other people think. Although we do have a significant amount of opinion so far. Could always use more. The questionnaires, the next item on the agenda. Leo, you really spent a lot of time. I'm sorry, Bob, you spent a lot of time on a wonderful email that I thought set out a wonderful strategy. Bring it back up here on my iPad. You know, when you broke it down into three distinct kind of themes, I think you called it: participation, communication, and form of government. What does everybody think about what Bob wrote here? Because it kind of helped me focus, and it got a little granular for me, which I thought was great. But I really like the way you put this together, Bob.
Thanks.
And it could be a good roadmap for us. I'm looking at it over here, so don't think I'm ignoring you guys. I've got three different. I've got my Mac over here. I've got my Big Mac right here, and then I've got my iPad over here, and then I got my bank laptop way over here, and then I got bank monitors behind me here.
Command
So
center.
this is like I got NASA here. This is I could launch a spacecraft. So, but I'm wondering what everybody thinks about this stuff, and Lauren R, especially you too, because you did a lot of work already on the questionnaire. Does everybody have the email that I'm looking at that Bob
Yep.
sent out on May 8th?
Yes.
So just to summarize, we would go out with the questionnaire after we've had public comment, and also after we maybe have formulated our own views, such that we would then have a better questionnaire to either confirm that or deny it. Or
It might make it a little more efficient and a little more
Meaningful.
valuable.
Mhm.
And Leo, I mean, Bob, let me not speak for you.
No, that was my thought. When I looked at the questions and grouped them like this, there really wasn't any question that the answer would help me form an opinion on which form of government, because I don't think anyone's going to understand what the forms of government are. I still don't have them all memorized yet.
Right.
So I thought maybe the best way to do this would be for us to debate it and just try to come to some conclusion if there's one or two that we're focusing on. And then the questions may come out of it, will that work for Madison? And the only way maybe to find that out is to ask people. And I tried to give those two examples, because to me right now, I don't see how a town hall form of government can work for a town as big as Madison, because everyone has the right to show up and you can't fit everyone.
Right.
So, but the counter to that would be Zoom meetings. Then everyone can sign in. But so I'm thinking maybe there's some specific questions that we need to ask to get feedback on to help craft the final recommendation.
So
Does
could I,
everybody yeah.
what I think it was Bob, it was what you had outlined here that got me to thinking about how do you approach this? And I think we've all, whether it's through specific interviews, our own experience, or even our lack of experience, depending upon where you are, might have our own opinions as to what we think would work best
Mhm.
for the town. So I said to myself, I said, I guess this is just my orientation. I kind of go back and I'm kind of a numbers person. And I said, I'd really like to do a little deeper dive into what the other towns is. So I
Yeah.
did, and I sent it to Bob. I didn't share it because I think we might want to look at it maybe,
Yes.
at a future meeting. But I said, well, let's look at, what the other towns are doing. And, it's interesting because my personal opinion from being on a charter review commission and from even my limited experience on the board of selectmen is, I think there's a lot of merit to a town manager.
Mhm.
But I said, what are all these towns doing? And, out of 169 towns, municipalities in Connecticut, 99 of those operate under the selectmen town meeting form of government. So that tells you something. I mean, it either says we're so complacent or, we're just swamp Yankees or I don't know what it says, but it says
What?
that
Where did you get that data?
that's a huge, huge number. And you have to ask the question, why? Are we cheap? Are we just stuck in our, ways? Do we think it works? Are we happy? Or, I don't know. So anyway, I don't want to spend the time now, but I did do sort of a dive through the numbers and for each of the forms of government. And I think I don't want to say that I've changed my mind in regard to what my feelings, but what I will say is it's opened my eyes to a lot.
Yes.
So I think that's important because I think that other people would, if I were out there and I didn't know a whole lot about my town and I thought, well, it seems to be working. So why fix something that isn't broken? I think those are questions I would have. Well, what other types of government are there? What are the differences and why is this town, for example, I think we talked about that, why Clinton changed their form of government. They had some major issues. They could not get budgets passed. They were just flailing. But there are other towns, like you look at Guilford, and they seem to be cooking along. They seem to be,
Right.
I look at ourselves, Madison and Guilford as being very similar. They seem to be happy. And Bob and I went and visited with Matt Hoey, and
Right.
he felt that this form of government was working for Guilford, and he saw this as working in the future. Again, just like everybody else, there are the pluses and the minuses. So
Right.
that's why I think that's what led me to what you said led me to say let's look at this, and maybe we do need to more or less come together and
Right.
totally have a better understanding as a group how we feel before we really go out and ask the public, because you can go out and ask the public, and if they're not totally informed and we're not totally informed, I don't know how much value there is. So
That's a good point, Gene. And I think, but even if we come to an agreement amongst ourselves and we do talk to the town, and we have to keep an open mind, right, throughout the whole process, because I've been on the town manager bandwagon now for a while. But then the representative town, the RTM, the representative town meeting concept, that intrigues me. And a smaller,
there's only five towns in the whole
I
state.
know, right? Brantford and Greenwich and
Darien and Fairfield.
Yeah, so
Fairfield.
I'm not suggesting that by any stretch, but it seems like you could form Madison into different sections, and then you have a person represent each section. You probably need 5 sections to get the whole town. It seems like it would be pretty efficient. But then again, you still have to have a manager. You still have to do all the management type things. So, I would go on the record right now saying, I would love to see us implement a town manager format with the Board of Selectmen being offset, from a money perspective. It seems to be the most efficient for me.
Yeah, I get the town manager part. I agree with that because it seems that what's the Madison budget? If you take the Board of Education out, it's what, 20 million plus?
Yeah, 20 million.
So it's gonna be 1%, 1% increase in the overall budget to hire someone.
Right.
You can handle that. But I think that, to me, the challenge I have is with the current form is that relying on the residents to vote on everything doesn't seem to be a viable path forward because people aren't doing it. So unless there's a way of getting people involved, you're going to have I just think of it and tell me if I have it wrong, but if the residents are supposed to act as the legislative body, they're not because they're not showing up for meetings.
Right.
So that then just gives all the power to the executive body, which is not what they were elected to be. So It's kind of messed up. So I think you have to address that fundamental disconnect between the form of government and the reality that no one's doing it. So I agree. I don't know what the answer is. It just doesn't seem to be the right way to do it.
And the town manager doesn't solve that issue.
No,
Town manager
Town manager is continuity. Yeah.
just replaces the first selectman as the CEO. So you're back in the same boat.
And I guess the other thing I still worry about, I came into this very strongly in favor of a town manager. But one of the things I guess I'm really concerned about still, and I don't know how you solve it, is I think the selectmen will still be a very political board.
Mhm.
And I believe whether you have a first selectman who is a Democrat or a Republican, that could be that's one side of partisanship. But if you have a so-called city council, board of directors, whatever, where the town manager is accountable to, and there's a lot of politics on that board, you get the same problem.
that's true.
And I'm struggling with that because I think, and it's too bad we didn't have this conversation maybe 10 years hence or 20 years ago, because right now everything is just so polarized and it's all political. I mean, even the discussion about the budget this year has gotten very inflamed, 0 increase, which is actually good, but they're drawing down our cash reserves and some group didn't want to spend a cent. And, and that's not all politics. That's just general disagreement.
Right.
But I do think the boards are really political around here. And so I really wonder what would happen with a city manager.
To your point, Peter, when we talked with both Toms today, Tom Scarpati said he didn't have any of those political issues way back 20 years ago. Whereas Tom Banish, just 6 months ago, he did, which is things have gotten, to your point, very, very polarized, not only locally, but
yeah, I mean, it's not,
regionally and
just
nationally.
here.
Yeah. So I do think that the town manager role could solve some problems, especially with the stability with the town employees and the HR function, and take on some of the things right out of the Board of Selectmen's hands that just day-to-day activities that they just don't need to really be involved with. And I also think that if a town manager is implemented, that some of those efficiencies could help fund his or her comp.
Yeah.
If we can be more efficient, then we can save money, and it can go to the town manager versus increasing taxes, because that's the last thing we want to do.
Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree, but I think if we vote for a town manager, I think we have to assume that salaries will go up, because you're going to add somebody at 150 to 180K that you can't defray somewhere else, unless you can, sort of like when you do a leverage buyout loan or something, you can show all these synergies that are going to occur.
Right,
but people will have to buy into that too. All
right.
they're gonna
right.
see is we're spending more for administration,
Yeah,
in my opinion.
this is gonna sound kind of strange, but I don't mind paying more for a competent person to run the town to become more efficient. As a business person, as a chairman of a nonprofit board, I have spent more money, but for the good of the organization. And I think that's going to bear fruit over a couple of years. And people have followed me in that conclusion. And I only have 2 more years left on that in this role. So I might not see the fruits of that, but hopefully I think that getting the right person in there to be more efficient and to take away some of the things that the Board of Selectmen are doing on a daily basis could bear fruit for us. And maybe there are other positions that are in the town that maybe need to be looked at as well, that this town manager could take on. So I'm not looking for anybody to be cut or eliminated, but this is the reality of where we are today. So
Is there any data on how much, stability there is in terms of town managers across Connecticut? Like how long do town managers stay in that position? Because I mean, we're assuming that it'd be more stable than, a first selectman, but it might not be more stable than a first selectman who's really popular, who gets, reelected multiple times. And I also have some concerns about the town manager in terms of, beyond the cost. I mean, it like you gave the example of it sort of like a, like a nonprofit with, like a board of directors. Like I'm an executive director of a nonprofit. And, if you have, if you have someone who's doing like a really good job, it's I guess more okay if the board sort of abdicates decision making to that director. But I do think if you have a lot of politics in the mix, that might happen in.
I'm gonna
we
guess.
lost her.
Yeah.
We got Jean back.
I don't know. I do have some concerns about that.
Lauren, we lost about 20 seconds of you.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Oh, it says my internet connection is unstable.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Yeah,
No, you're right. Yeah,
I
hear you.
I don't think it necessarily solves the check and balances problem. I don't think it necessarily solves the stability problem. I think if you want to, I mean, I'm not for a town manager, but I think I think to make the argument for a town manager, I think there needs to be some hard data on.
I think we lost her
Trouble
again.
all day.
Did I just
We
get lost again?
Yeah, we lost you again.
Yes.
We lost you at hard data.
We got it.
Is there-
Yeah, I agree. We need some kind of data to help us understand the overall benefit of it.
Right.
Is there any information on like the credit rating of towns with town managers versus, I don't know. I'm just trying to think of what would be good data.
Yeah,
I mean, the other part I look at it too is it's just continuity, because if Madison just went through and they developed this 10-year, I think it's a 10-year strategy of sorts, about 87 different strategic initiatives. You can't execute on that if it's new people every 2 years.
right.
You're going to keep falling down, and every time you go to start something, it's going to get revisited halfway through. So maybe there's another way to maintain the continuity there. Maybe it's 4-year terms that are offset by 2 years, but the lack of continuity, I just see as completely inefficient. You'll never have a 10-year plan actually move forward. It'll be reinvented every 2 years.
We do have a town planner. And so Lauren, what's his role in the 10-year plan?
So Dave is the town planner and economic development director. So he oversees the plan of conservation and development, which is established by the Planning and Zoning Commission. And that's, you know, that's his role. It's planning and economic development. It's a lot of what might encompass a town manager role, but depending on different towns, the town manager is also the HR function. They're also the financial function. For bigger towns, they're just oversight. It's, you know, it's kind of different throughout the state.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think Lauren and Bob's point, I think we have a difficult time proving why a city manager is better.
Mhm.
I'm struggling with, I mean, I have a visceral reaction that I wouldn't mind seeing someone who's apolitical in there. But
Exactly,
I also have a hard time figuring out how to sell it.
right.
But
I have a visceral feeling that it would work and it would be great for us, but I can't tell you why. We need to figure out the why.
So,
but I think it also,
So-
it weaves in with the style of government you pick too.
Right.
And then also you have to look at the
So
entire
from-
organizational structure and see if there's a redundancy there, because you may end up with 3 people doing the job of, I don't know, maybe end up with 3 people now, 3 people later, but different roles.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of
So-
the things that and this won't go on forever, so we can't think of it this way, but Madison does benefit from some really good professional people in the office that don't need a city manager to tell them what to do. Dave Anderson at the top of the list, Stacy Noblitz would be at the top of the list as well. Those are really capable people that we're pretty fortunate to have.
We have Lauren too.
We have Lauren as well. But I mean, you know, in terms of heading up town groups, I mean, Lauren, you don't have to give your opinion there, but I think we've done better than the average bear in terms of the people that we employ.
And I think that's one of the reasons why we've done as well as we have, and we haven't been under any sort of pressure to make the changes. We haven't been forced with a crisis. Let's just say, I hate to keep picking on our neighbor Clinton, but I mean, they really had a crisis that wasn't working. And there were a lot of other reasons there, and maybe they don't have the same, because not all towns, and Bob, correct me if I'm wrong, but not all towns have the same level of professionalism in
Right.
department managers.
I agree. Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, and again, I have to go back and ask the question. I mean, I know we talk about participation and I know that's an issue, but we were not going to solve that issue with putting a town manager in there in lieu of a first selectman / CEO.
Yeah.
That would require a different change. So, you know, and the closest thing to almost forced participation is the RTM. And I know that there's some of our Fairfield County towns have had a lot of success with that, and they seem to be very happy with it. But why are only 5 towns in the whole state using that form of government?
Right.
And I have heard some very negative things about the RTM in Brantford. It's not all wine and roses. So,
You know,
but I think you'll get that with every form of government,
mhm.
right? So, like for me, I mean, I you know, and maybe I'll just say this to be a little provocative, but I don't know the problems we're trying to fix. To me, it seems we're starting from the wrong end. We're talking about this form of government or that form of government or this or that, instead of saying, well, what are the big issues that we're dealing with? Continuity. Okay, so what can you do from the charter perspective? It may just literally be another clause in the charter that addresses it, instead of saying, well, we're going to get rid of the town meeting format. You know, it's like there's a hammer to take care of a problem that just needed a little grease. You know, and it's trying to figure out those problems and what it is that we need to do from a charter perspective or from a governmental form perspective to fix those things. You know, and I think you know, even when you look at the questionnaire, right, or at least as I see it, the charge that we have is conduct a public opinion poll to gauge community preferences. Preferences about what? Preference about completely different forms of government, or preferences about how government should work? Because maybe there's people who are more concerned about checks and balances. And then maybe there's ways that we can address checks and balances by adjusting the charter. Or, you know, as Bob said earlier, well, an RTM arguably does that too. But again, is that just the hammer when you could have just applied a little grease? And so that's where I struggle. Like, the debate and the discussion that we have is great. But to me, it's like we're a few steps ahead just yet. We don't know. We all have our own personal opinions and things like this as to what may sound better or look better or be more of a fit. But, you know, I think from my perspective, you know, it's like Gene, you said earlier, you know, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. I'm kind of one of those. Like, I don't want to just all of a sudden, you know, it's not us anyway that decides any of this. But let's say the town just decides to flip to mayor council, because that's the one we haven't talked about yet tonight. And then all of a sudden, all the great stuff that happens in town goes up in smoke. Oh, that's not worth it, you know? And we didn't even need to get there. We just needed to fix some things. You know, it's like we were talking earlier with the administrative officer. You know, the charter references it with respect to the powers of the first selectman being the chief administrative officer, unless there's one that's appointed by an article that doesn't exist. It's 7.3 that it references. There's no 7.3. So if an administrative officer is like a town manager without the same level of compensation, or maybe something in between, why don't we just craft a 7.3 and have that be added to the charter that gives an administrative officer some sort of power? And maybe the issues that we're talking about now, you know, at least with some of the continuity or whatnot, maybe that would be addressed.
That's a good point, Leo, because that's why I was asking Lauren about the job description, because I don't know what that person does, or I don't know what that person's role would be. And something in the middle could, you know, possibly work too, with a little tweak in the charter.
When I was doing research, I came up with, and I think I don't know how it ended up being some organization out of New Hampshire, but they compared and contrasted the job description and the responsibilities of a chief administrative officer. We just use that compared to a town manager, just as far as the breadth of their responsibilities. So that's something we might want to go back and again, I don't know why it was state specific. It might have just been I actually went on, I don't know whether Lauren Kerma has anything in regard to job descriptions that might sort of help answer those questions.
I'm gonna go to CCM and ask them to give us some.
Okay.
There are town administrators in other towns in Connecticut.
Okay, so that would be good. That would be very helpful.
Yeah, maybe
We're
not
saying
town manager. Sorry, go ahead.
No, just quickly, is the suggestion that a town administrator wouldn't be a town manager, or would it just be, it would define better what the first selectman does?
So an administrator is not on the same level as a town manager. So it wouldn't be establishing a new CEO. The first selectman would still be the CEO, and the administrative, town administrator or town administrative officer would it would just be like a different type of director. They would still report to the first selectman. And they wouldn't have, in a lot of towns, that person doesn't have the same type of day-to-day oversight of other directors or HR functions. That's generally the big difference between the two, is what type of oversight they have over other employees between the town manager and the town administrator.
And to your knowledge, Lauren, with the administrators, do they typically follow the first selectman, if you will? Like if a new one comes in, does a new administrator come in too? Or is it someone who's consistent?
No, generally it's a staff position. With a town manager, a lot of the employment for town managers run similar to the chief of police or the superintendent, where they have a contract for 4 to 5 years
Right.
and that contract can be renegotiated. A town administrator is generally just another departmental director, like just another salaried employee.
Yeah.
And
I
not
like
at the
that.
whim of the executive. They're just there.
Yeah.
Apolitical. Okay. It's very interesting.
So that would be, that would be a situation where if you had a first selectman that was a good leader, but didn't really have a lot of depth in regard to management, that would sort of supplement. And again, then that first selectman probably would not be paid $100,000. It would be something less.
Yeah. Sure.
Kind of a hybrid.
Yeah. Would an
Right.
administrator
Yeah.
though take on, but they're just a staff position, so they're equal to Stacy or Dave Anderson or anybody else and would not have any oversight over them.
Not generally. It really is town specific. I can tell you off the top of my head, I know, I think Bolton is a town administrator. I think Wilton is a town administrator. Chester, I believe, is a town administrator. There aren't many. And again, it really is, what does that town need? So I know in Bolton, the town administrator is the personnel function, but I believe that they do not have a personnel or HR director. So that's part of the reason why.
Small town too.
Yeah.
Leo, I think you had a good point, though. I think the idea of defining the problem we're trying to solve would be very helpful.
Yeah, if you hearken back to our first night together and that list of areas of analysis that Al Goldberg had given us, he doesn't list things to solve, but he certainly gives a nice little sample of areas that he as a select person has questioned over the long period of time he's been around. So there are some good things there that we could look at again, looking to solve some of the issues. And a lot of it comes down to that participation aspect that we keep talking about, that it's the holy grail of politics, is getting your electorate to participate. And no one's got the answer for that. So
Yeah, it
I'm
seems
not sure it can be solved.
all forms of government that we've talked have the problem of poor turnout.
Right.
It's interesting though,
Unfortunately.
in one of our handouts early on, Gus, I think, gave us a list of the town meetings that have occurred since 2010.
Mhm.
Yes.
And, you look at some of these and you say, okay, people should be coming, but the first one was the annual town meeting. I don't know what 43/14 means. It's not clear to me. Special appropriation for the Tuxas Walkway. I mean, who's going to really come out for that? Annual budget reconciliation, it was $234,000 additional dollars. Condemnation for easement, no dollars involved. Special education funding, $85,000. And then an annual town meeting again. You go down the litany of things here and you sort of say to yourself, I wouldn't come either. I mean, because what people are coming for is they theoretically are coming to vote. But even at that measure, Warren, what do we get for the May budget? 25% if we're lucky? Maybe.
Yeah, and it has been lower than that in prior years. I
Yeah.
think 2 years ago it was only like 11%. It
Right.
wasn't a high turnout.
So the big numbers that people are going to come and have to talk about are going to have to go to initiative anyway. These are all really small dollars.
Yeah.
I'm just throwing out the thought. I mean,
Yeah.
the idea of a town representative would be great, but if we're going to bring them together to talk about these items, they're probably not going to be very excited about it.
No. Okay. Well, we'll continue to discuss. And even tonight, my mind has been changed a little bit already on some of the things that we're talking about, based on what Rob and Leo were talking about, and the former military person in me always likes to have a leader, that you can count on and rely on, that will take responsibility. And to me, that's a town manager, but I'm not sure that's I'm not sure yet that's the way to go just yet.
Lauren, is there an organizational chart for the town, just with positions, departments?
Yeah, I can get you guys a copy of that.
That'd be great.
Yeah,
That'd be
that'd be
helpful.
helpful. Yeah, that'd be helpful too.
Did you see
Cool, right? I love that.
Who's that?
Gene, is that you?
No, that's not me.
Gus, I think it was Gus.
Oh, okay.
He's still muted.
Howie
Just
is.
muted him.
Yeah,
I
he was
think it was echoing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. Well, we're past the 7 o'clock hour. Does anybody have anything else that they wanted to discuss? Gina, I will send out that information that you sent me this afternoon, and we can make that an agenda item for next week.
Okay.
If we have time.
Yeah.
It might have to go into the next week because of the public.
I thought Lauren gave us some of that information early on too, didn't you, Lauren? The town committee, how many cities are town
Yeah.
committees
Yeah.
versus council manager, et cetera.
Yeah, this is
I'm looking at something here that showed that from
Yeah.
Well,
earlier.
this is a little, just a little
Just a
more
little
granular.
Okay.
yeah.
So next week we have our meeting, which will be from 6 to 7 for whatever's on our agenda. Then the 7 o'clock is the public hearing. Is that correct? Okay.
Yep.
Oh, gotcha. So I'll make that part of the agenda for next week, and then we'll all jump on for 7 o'clock.
It'll be the same link.
Okay.
Lauren, what's
It's
that
just-
website again with all the data?
It's ccm-ct.org.
Got it. Thank you.
Lauren, could I trouble you to send invites again specific to us getting in?
Yeah.
So if you wouldn't mind, I won't delete them this time thinking they're duplicate.
I just use,
Not a problem.
you can use the same one every time, right, Lauren?
Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah.
So
I did this as a recurring meeting, so it's the same link every week.
Okay.
because all I did was
Okay,
save
fix
the
it
original
once.
email. I start it, I'll just go back to that one
Yeah.
every
Yep.
time. Okay, great.
All
Well,
right, good.
ladies and gentlemen, oh, go ahead.
Before you go, you have public comment. Gus is
Oh.
back in and he'd like to say
Okay.
something. So I'm going
Sure.
to let him talk.
Okay.
We have another attendee as well.
I guess.
They're both Gus.
Oh,
Hi, Gus. Gus, good afternoon. Good evening.
It's on mute. There you go.
Go ahead, Gus.
I think he's on mute again.
Can you hear me now?
Can hear you.
Okay, why are you getting,
ain't gonna work.
Sounds like he's in outer space.
why you're getting the background noise is, I'm having a problem with my computer. Can you see me, Lauren?
We cannot see you and you are echoing pretty badly.
Okay, but you can hear me, right? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay, I just wanted to comment on a couple of the things that, from my lengthy background that might help you. You had talked earlier about the issues with having in the existing charter where a first selectman candidate who loses the election but has enough votes can become on the board of selectmen.
Right.
Okay, in my second term, I had 3 people who had lost the first selectman vote, 2 that I had defeated, and one of the other party people that I had defeated somebody from my party. So I had 3 defeated first selectman candidates on the board, and it was a horror show.
Oh, yeah.
So, that was something that I had mentioned in something I had sent you about that. In the issue of the town manager and how long they may stay around, yes, some of them will move from town to town, but it doesn't happen very, very often if you look at it. And most town managers are just like a superintendent of schools. They get a 3-year contract. And if at the end of 3 years you're not happy with them, they're gone, just like a superintendent of school. And the issue as to their pay, I think it's been alluded to by some of the comments you had. You want a chief executive officer, and you're going to get what you're going to pay for. And by the way, if you look at the charter and read very carefully what it says about the powers of the board, first selectman, you will find that basically the first selectman is a member of an executive committee, and the first selectman has 1 vote out of 5. And that's where the issue came in my second term, when I got 3 people who had been defeated in that. So the other thing is the term limits. The town of Guilford, about 8 or 10 years ago, when they changed their charter, they went to 4-year terms.
Right.
And the last charter revision up in Killingworth, they took the first selectman vote as a standalone, so that a losing first selectman would not end up on the board, because they had problems with that over the years. I think you guys have done a very good job listening to your discussion, and I would strongly urge you to consider 2 things that have come to you from over the years from the public. The public has spoken in Madison. We've had 44 town meetings in the town of Madison since 2010. And in those days, the membership of the town meeting was about 11,500. Now it's like about 13,100. And of those 44 town meetings, only 2 of them had a quorum of 75. So to me, that's very meaningful. You're going to be hearing from traditionalists who feel the only thing we should have in the town of Madison is a town meeting form of government. And you should listen to them and ask them why. And might ask them how many town meetings they've gone to in the last 10 years. And the second thing is, in 2015, we had a charter revision on the ballot. And in that ballot, it was to continue with the town meeting form of government. And the yes vote was 38%, and the no vote was 62%. So 62% of those folks who voted in that election in 2015 voted to change the form of government, if you want. They voted to reject continuing with a town meeting form of government. So to me, those are the significant items. You're going to be hearing from various number of special interest groups. I think you should hear from the public in general.
Gus, that's
Okay.
very helpful. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
All right, thank
That's
you.
really good.
Yeah. Gus, I hope you join us for, on the 18th.
Me? I'm sorry, what did you say?
I hope you join us for the public comment on the 18th.
Okay, I will, thank you.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Great.
By the way, when you.
Hey, Lauren, is it possible to get a copy of the ballot initiative for the charter in 15?
It had a copy on the agenda of the PowerPoint presentation you were gonna make. And I thought it was very, very good. It's been taken down, but it was on there maybe by mistake.
Okay.
Okay, thank you again for your time and effort.
Gus,
And
thank you. I really
for your
appreciate it.
opinion,
We'll,
because
we'll,
that's what-
we'll be in touch for sure. Thank you. Okay,
Great.
folks. Anything else that anyone would like to discuss off the agenda or off the agenda? If not, I'll take a motion to adjourn. And again, keep the comments coming during the week. Love reading that stuff. And I'll talk to you, or I'll see you on the 18th at 6 and then again at 7. Okay.
All right.
All right. I really appreciate it. Thank you,
Thank
Gene
you.
and Lauren, for
Adjourn.
getting on to this morning. And Lauren,
You wanna
thank
do
you
a
for all the
motion to
help as well.
adjourn?
All
Bob,
right.
you want to do a motion to adjourn?
Please do a motion.
I make a motion that we adjourn.
Lauren seconded. All
Yeah.
in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No abstentions. Thank you, folks. Have a great week.
Good night,
Be
all.
safe. Bye-bye.
Bye.